Okay, so now we are going to prepare for our next session, which will be moderated by our SGGA Secretary Jave So, who is also the CEO and co-founder of Resurgence. We will also, joining the panel, we have Dr. Alan Bunny from Panda Global, Sean from Talent Esports, and Yasin from PSG Esports. So I'm going to hand this over to Jave now.
Hello, hi. Alicia, can you hear me? All good?
Yep, all good.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Alicia. And again, once again, thank you guys for staying with us. We're now going into the next panel, answering the big question on how do teams recruit. So I hope personally, I hope that the last session has been an insightful one for all of you who are trying to get a job in esports. Now we are going to try and share a bit of insights from the fellow panelists that I have with me here on the perspectives of teams and what goes on really behind the scene. So a quick introduction by myself. My name is Jave. I'm the Secretary and Board Member of the SGGA, Singapore Games Association. And joining me today, we have Dr. Alan Bunny, who is the CEO of Panda Global. Dr. Alan, can you please say hi?
Hi there.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Dr. Alan?
Well, he said what you need to say, really. I'm a practicing physician, and I'm the CEO of the largest 1v1 esports team in the world. Panda Global's been a joy for the last 5 years, and actually just made the transition to full-time CEO and part-time doctor about 6 months ago. So it's been busy, though. It's been a very busy 6 months.
Great. Thanks for joining us. By the way, Dr. Allen is calling in from the United States, and that's it's practically 3 a.m. for him now. So thanks for being here, Dr. Allen. Joining us also is Yasin. Yasin is the Chief Gaming Officer of PSG. Yasin, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, Yasin, can you tell us a little bit more about PSG and more about yourself?
Yeah, so basically, as you said, I'm the Chief Gaming Officer at PSG. PSG has, as you may know, it's a football club, and I'm leading the esports division. So basically, it's really the esports strategy, hiring and keeping players into our brand.
Great. Fun fact, by the way, Yasin is only 26 years old, and he's already the Chief Gaming Officer of one of the largest football club that has made its move into esports. PSG has also got a little bit of traction with Dota in China with LGD, and recently also partnering up with Talent Esports for PCS. And speaking about Talent Esports, we got ourselves here Sean, who's also the CEO of Talent Esports. Sean, say hi.
Hey guys, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Great.
Cool. Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet everyone. My name's Sean, one of the CEO and one of the co-founders of Talon. We are an esports platform that's across multiple regions: Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and also in Thailand. Yeah, my background from a sort of investment banking and technology background, and transitioned into. Pleasure to meet everyone.
Great, nice having you here. Right, so it's interesting because esports, especially from a team's perspective, we have put together people from various backgrounds. We've got a doctor, we've got a very young guy who's been in esports for a very long time, as we've even got an investment banker. Clearly, this is a nascent industry that a lot of different teams are really trying to navigate this space around. So today we're going to share a little bit more about how do teams recruit and what does a job in esports mean from a team's perspective. So maybe to start things off, maybe we can have Sean share a little bit more about the various roles and the operations of Talent Esports. Sean, can you hear me? Yeah, I think you're muted.
Okay, sorry guys. Yeah, so I guess from Talent's perspective, we have, and it's probably similar with most other esports teams, kind of have three key functions. The first is on the performance side, which is very much orientated towards roles which are focused around team management, performance management, recruiting, developing, retaining talent. That's very important for any club because, of course, you want to have the best players at your club performing. And so we spend a lot of effort at Talent here, basically creating roles within there. So we have a chief gaming officer, chief performance officer, a lot of player managers, people who even just like chefs and sports management, that type of stuff, just to kind of elevate and help the players get to the next level. On the content and creative side, we have like a full a creative team. So that'd be graphics, videographers, producers, directors, people who are more on the content and creative side. So there's a whole suite of people that we operate there that manage sort of our players, our social, as well as the content creators that are on the Talent platform. And then lastly, operations, which is a lot around sort of finance, operations, just day-to-day running of a club. And so, yeah, there's kind of those three broad categories. And I think that it's a lot of different roles and functions out there that are, valid within other companies.
Great. By the way, a small little note for my fellow panelists. Please don't mute your mic. If you were to unmute it, the permissions needs to be granted again. We're under very strict settings here. On that note though, Sean, maybe you can share how many employees are there really in Talent? You mentioned chef, you mentioned, even from a finance perspective, just how big is Talent Esports?
So professional players wise, we have close to, I think now pushing close to 40 professional players. And then the back-end staff that are used to support them anywhere is looking actually kind of expanding now as well. It's about 15 back-end staff, right? So I would say most of it's weighted towards performance management side. We are looking to ramp up on the creative side, kind of the next 6 months as well. But yeah, about 12 to 15 back-end staff and about 37 to 40-ish professional players we have underneath the platform.
Wow, that's quite a lot. And Dr. Allen, just a quick question for you. Are your operations similar to Talent, or how does it differ?
We're a little bit different. With our focus on the 1v1 esports, we don't have like a central location, so all of our players are spread out around the world, which is nice. It's flexible, allows me to recruit people not just within my own territory or people that wouldn't be eligible for a visa or something. But it also means that I can't do a lot of those central things like physical training or chefs and whatnot because we don't have one location for our players to be. And then also on top of that, Panel is a little bit more diversified as an organization than I think almost probably any other team in the world. We make hardware, for example. So we actually have, actual mechanical engineers on staff as well. And we have, software engineers too, because we create technology in the back end for training for the players as well. So we're very, I think, cutting edge in a lot of those sort of ways. It's not easy to do. But that's sort of, what we aren't investing on the player management side or the player, sort of leveling them up on that side. We're doing it in other ways for them instead.
Great. And I understand that this is very different for PSG. PSG is a little bit more of a facilitative. Maybe, Yasin, you can share with us a little bit more about your side of the operations.
Definitely. So basically, like for the esports division, we are not like a huge team. We are a team of like 6 people, but we do have resources into the club on other divisions such as the sponsoring and the sponsoring team or the creative team into the club who are doing other stuff, and then we can count on them. And then depending on also the team that we are working with, such as Talon, who got also resources we can count on. So basically, it's like a team of 5 people working with different teams, depending the game, depending the team, depending the region. So yeah, pretty different.
Right. So I'm just going to move on to the next question, but very interesting. Just for you guys who don't know this, PSG also supports local Singapore talents. They also have a Brawl Star team, by the way. I think it's ranked number 1 in the world right now. Yasin, please correct me if I'm wrong.
We ranked number 3 now, but we qualified for the World Championship this year, and we've been the first team to qualify. So yeah, and it's a team of 3 Singaporeans and 1 Japanese player.
Wow, congratulations. Right, so next question I have here is really, you guys have covered various roles, key roles within the teams, right? Sean mentioned about chef and nutritionist. Dr. Allen mentioned a little bit more about player support. Yasin mentioned that his outfit's very different. So one key question I have is, what do you look out for when you're hiring people to join your team? From not just from a back-end perspective first, maybe. Maybe Dr. Allen can answer that question first.
Sure. I think that is a moving target. There's not actually one quick or easy answer to give, but I will say that passion is huge, and your resume oftentimes barely matters. I can read, and we've been recruiting recently, so I've been going through a lot of resumes, and there's almost no resume that is actually adequate for the job. So doing something in your own time, not necessarily a job or just volunteering and showing your passion, actually can make your resume stand out so much more, because it lets me know this is what you want to do. And at the end of the day, it's about standing out from other applicants. There's actually someone that we're talking to who doesn't even know what esports is, and he's one of the leading candidates for the position that we're hiring, because he just brings so much innovation and so much interest to it. He likes the idea of it. He does his research, is very thorough. So standing out is incredibly important, and showing that extra layer of passion, capability, and trying to go that extra mile makes all the difference, because this is, I think, an extraordinarily difficult industry to recruit for. It's been around for what? Technically you could say 20 years, but esports wasn't a word past maybe 8 years ago. So it's very, very difficult to make an application even for this industry, and obviously even more so to recruit somebody for an open position because of that.
I see. And on that note, would that differ? Is having a paper, a degree important for Yassine and Sean?
No, I do agree with Alan, but basically, it's my opinion again. For me, you have to create your own position and you have to create your own job into the esports in a way. So there is a bit of luck, I would say. Also, you have to be at the right moment, at the right place. Now it's completely different with the COVID situation, of course, but back in the days, it was not about where you come from or what have you done before. It was more about what is your value, what can you bring. So yeah, I agree with Alan.
And for Sean, does it differ for you?
Yeah, I think what Alan and Yassine says is very relevant, right? Having a good work ethic and an attitude and a passion towards gaming is definitely one of a thing which definitely helps. I think in certain roles, if I look at it at Talon, we will need some technical skill sets. So if you're coming in as a video producer, or you're coming in as a director, or you say you want to do business development, obviously having some sort of work experience in those areas are relevant. But in saying that, a lot of the roles are very malleable and also doing a little bit of everything anyway in certain functions. And so, yeah, I completely agree with what Alan and Yassine said. It's about creating those opportunities, showing proactiveness, and I think all of that will take people a long way. And yeah, you need a little bit of luck as well, timing wise, right? Certain teams, the hiring may happen sporadically, and then if you're in the right place, right time, kind of place. But definitely having the right attitude and a strong work ethic and a proactiveness when it comes to things will take you very far.
Right. So what I'm hearing, and do correct me if I'm wrong, fellow panelists, is that having a degree is not as important in esports for teams. And how can people who are interested to work for teams apply at, say, your fellow companies? Just an open-ended question. Anyone can take that.
I think honestly, I sometimes recruit people who just email us, straight away with no introduction, and because they just make a strong case. Exactly as Yassine is saying, you have to make your own role sometimes, and there's things I don't know. I remember once I recruited a graphic design intern because he went into our Discord and shared some graphics and said, "Hey, I made these graphics better," and he added some animations to them, and I said, "I like that," so I hired him. It's depending on your ability, your passion, what you do, there's a lot of different ways you can get in. But honestly, just keeping your eyes open and seeing when there is an open job position and trying to slip in there as much as you can. I think I opened 3 positions at the same time, and I've had now 4 or 5 people I've interviewed who actually applied to 2 or 3 of those open positions because they just really wanted to get in, and they had a varied enough skill set that they kind of fit multiple, but not exactly. And one of them they fit better than the other, so I interviewed for that. So it's pretty open.
Great. So I believe there's a lot of Singaporeans here who are wondering, would they stand an equal or good chance at teams who are not based here in Singapore? And I guess that that basically answers the question. So for all of you who are listening in, if you are interested in work at teams, do note that we are a pretty competitive bunch. So if you can take what you see on our social channels and say, hey, I can do better, you'll likely get the job. That's what I'm hearing. Right. So moving on to the next point. So clearly teams have got a lot of back end and front end, right? So when we say back end, we're talking about chef, we're talking about nutrition support, we're talking about marketing, content, finance, etc. But there's also an aspect where it's very much about the players moving forward. And I'm sure there's a lot of aspirants who are here who are looking at, how do we select which players that we want to pick up. And in order to answer that question, I think the first question to ask really is, what markets do your fellow teams operate in? And does having a presence in those markets limit your selection criteria? So maybe we can have Yasin answer this question first on players.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, for our side, we do have a huge brand diversification strategy. So it's not only about esports. Esports is part of it, but not only about esports. And there is like key markets that we are targeting, and we're trying to on those markets engage with the PSG fans through esports, and also to reach new audience and new fans. So depending the region of the world, the country, we have to identify a game and let's say the right team to fit with that, and also the right storytelling to fit with it. Talon is the best example also because of the fact that we was looking to target Southeast Asia, a top tier game. So League of Legends was making sense, and just trying to find the right partner who fits and see esports as, let's say, the same as us, and then take it from there and trying to build the relationship. So basically it's really storytelling, feelings, and just starting from a strategy who's like just figuring out the right market and the right region of the world.
And on the topic of strategy, I'm sure for Sean, you mentioned you've got presence in Asia Pacific and in Thailand. So does having decisions and strategy on which market to operate in limit the player that you pick up as well?
No, for us, generally, we're open to taking players from any region, and we have an expansion plan to push further into Southeast Asia, get markets like Philippines, Singapore, whether it be Vietnam, Indonesia. These are all massive markets where there's huge sports potential, and there's a lot of good talent as well, right? We've picked up players previously when we ran an Overwatch squad playing in Pacific. We'd had Thai players from Taiwan, players from Hong Kong, players from South Korea, all combined together. And so we're super open to that. We really want to represent the Pacific region. And if there is amazing talent within specific games, pending sort of visa situations, pending language barriers, if we can get past those things, then generally I would say we're super open, right? It really just depends on our sort of framework around how we assess players. And, for us, having a strong work ethic, having an understanding of the importance of team and ability to take feedback and some form of humility, then all those things, if you can demonstrate those things, it really doesn't matter where you're from. And if you're here to win and you're really motivated to deliver championships, then yeah, we can take Singaporean players, we can take players from any region, as long as they've got what we're looking for and what our coaches are looking for, then generally we'd be okay with accepting that.
Speaking about Singaporean player, I understand, Dr. Allen, you have a Singaporean Soul Calibur champion who's also playing for Panda Global, Jovian. Maybe you can share a little bit more about how you scouted him, and and whether the different markets you operate within is a key example for fighting games.
For us, it wasn't about regionality. It was about the game. We saw Soul Calibur 6 was coming out, and we decided to do a deep dive exploration into Soul Calibur, into the scene, into the individuals. And Jovian really stood out to us. Shen Chen is his gamer tag. Shen Chen's history with the game, and his position within the community, and more than anything else, what really stood out to us, I think, was his leadership, was his ability to be sort of a front face of his own community. When you do a reach into these sort of titles, they don't necessarily have huge esports backing. You want to choose someone who is a good representative. So it's not just about being a champion. Being a champion is fantastic, and we're very happy with his ability and skill. But it's about being that leader of his community, being someone that his whole community can rally behind. And Shen Chen was an easy choice for us. The fact that he was Singaporean was a kind of a secondary advantage to us because we didn't have, we only had, I think, one other player at the time in Southeast Asia. So we didn't really have as strong a presence as we wanted in it. But like I said, the main thing was he fit the bill. He was a good choice. So we had no hesitation in signing him. And he's still on the team, very, very wonderful competitor, and very happy to have him.
Great. So if you're Singaporean or you're not, doesn't matter. What's important is you have a good attitude, you are hardworking, you're humble, and most importantly, you reach out to teams, right? So on that note, though, I think one of the key questions that a lot of people ask, especially from my, I also operate a team that's based in Singapore, clearly not at your levels. We are very small. So one of the key questions I get when I interact with all of these players and aspirants is, how do teams decide what game titles and who to pick up? Is there a process, a leaderboard of sort? Maybe you guys can share with me some of your experience.
For me, it's every game is different. Everything's unique. We look at skill sometimes. We look at, as I said, leadership before. We look at sellability sometimes, depending on the games and depending on what our roster already looks like. Sometimes we look at streams. We look at content creators. So it can be not, maybe someone at the lower end of the top 50, but they have really good content that, we might be interested in signing them too. So it depends on so many different factors that I couldn't tell you just because someone walked in front of me that, I would want to sign him, no matter, or her, no matter what the game is. No, it really depends on the situation. And every time it's unique for when we recruit somebody.
And for Sean, specifically for you, what do you think is the best way for an aspirant to get picked up by talent?
Just to talk about a little bit about the structure and how we recruit. At our organization level, we put a significant amount of emphasis on, firstly, on the coaches that we bring in, because we feel like that if there is an alignment with the coach, with the values that we have and what we're looking to achieve, then we put a lot of effort into that. Now, once we've recruited the coaches, we actually allow our coaches a lot of freedom when it comes to the recruitment of players, because they're the voice of how they want to play and how they want to build the team and the specific play style that they want to build, and then they go out for players. And each game is different, each coach is different, but we do have a consistent framework that we apply with the coaching staff, but how they recruit is their own method. So, if I talk about League of Legends and sort of what Big Fafa is looking for example, past performance is obviously a big part of it, right? Have you got that experience in the professional space? That's a big part if you're going to go straight into the first team. If you look at more of our academy side of things, then they do look a lot through, let's say, if you're playing in League of Legends, Korean Challenger, like how many points you have, how much time you're spending in there is very relevant, because that's kind of the pinnacle, the highest level. And then from there, we kind of then break it down and look at various personality aspects, right? Can you work with the team? Can you understand how your role functions with the team? And then can you take feedback from coaches, right? We have a lot of talented players who often don't want to take feedback from players, and you're going to work in a club environment then, and you're working with 4 other professional players who need to do that. So I would say obviously do the work in regards to the ladders that you're playing in with various games. I think that's one thing we definitely look at. And then obviously be connected with the community as well. I think a lot of our scouting is through people who are playing in semi-professional and amateur tournaments as well. And so if you're doing well there, being part of the community, you will be recognized. Not all the time, of course. Sometimes it may be luck. Sometimes not always 100% when it comes to recruitment. But I think contributing and working in that semi-professional amateur space is also important, because we do keep a very close eye in those spaces in local tournaments, local leagues, to make sure that we identify talent that we can speak to them.
Right, so correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but what you're saying is that for an aspirant, for an amateur, they will have to play in community events, they will have to maybe play the in-game ranking a little bit better, try and get a little bit more visibility from their front?
Yeah, I think that's really important, and that's kind of the main areas that I would say roughly our coaches would be looking at. Of course, each game is quite different, but yeah, from the main titles that.
Right, and for Yasin, when you How does this differ for PSG, or if there's any difference at all?
There is not a huge difference, but there is, like, let's say, a difference more on let's say the marketing and communication side, where even if a player is good, he has to fit with our ethics and he has to fit with the, let's say, the brand identity. So we try to understand also what are our value on top of that, such as media training, or like, let's say, if the player is really young, we have to also educate him about esports, because most of the young people today think that esports is just playing, where it's like more stuff than only playing. There is a lot of stuff behind it, and coaches, analysts, and those stuff. So yeah, I would say adding education on top of it, media training, stuff like that.
Right. That sounds great. All right. So before we go on to the next part, do drop your questions on in the chat itself, and we'll be compiling all this for Q&A towards the end of the panel. Speaking about questions, one of the most absurd question I was ever faced with from a fellow Singaporean was, do teams look at players like superstars? Is there like a specific kind of charisma that's required, right? Charisma is the best way he put it across to me, because he was actually really asking, how handsome do I have to be, or how pretty do I have to be a pro player? In your various organizations, maybe you can share a little bit more about the balance in between skill and, you could say, charisma.
I think for us at Talon, very much orientated towards performance, particularly for professional players, right? And of course, we will teach like how to get more comfortable in front of a camera, and the more you do it, like with anything in life, the first time you do it's awkward. As you do more of it, you get better. But I would say, like, the look side is, it helps for sure, right, when it comes to sellability, but in the end, it's skill that's the most important for us, and particularly titles where we're trying to go for titles, then it's that stuff can come later. I think the technical skill is the most important thing. I think if you're looking to build long-term careers within esports, look at all those successful streamers who have come from being professional players. Of course, being thoughtful about those, like the social media marketing and the looks and branding of everything is important. But from our perspective, I think technical skill is the most important, and your ability to fit into the team is the number one priority for us. Yeah.
And would this differ for Dr. Allen and Panda Global?
I actually think we're on the other side of the spectrum, where winning is important, but it's not everything. Being good enough to be top 8, to be top 3, it does matter quite a bit for us. But charisma is extraordinarily important. Charisma has nothing to do with looks. In fact, some of our most charismatic people are not the best looking people on the team. And having that ability to rally people and then to convert eyes to streams, to YouTube, is very, very powerful in today's day and age, and it's a huge focus for us as well. And I think the big reason for that is, we do a lot of fighting games again, and those don't have huge prize pools. So, winning first place doesn't make you a whole lot of money. And so you have to figure out other ways of doing that. So that's why our priorities sort of have shifted towards being more charismatic. And like I said, sometimes we're looking at a player who's not in the top 10 that we might even be signing because they're very charismatic. And in fact, one of our top players, Esam, he's a Smash player. He's only ranked number 14 in the world. But he's one of our most important players because he's so charismatic. And he's one of the largest figureheads in the entire community because of that charisma. So, it is extraordinarily important to us having, people that can do that, or even are diamonds in the rough. Sometimes you find a player, like I believe Mars is number 5 in the world. Another good example, and he has that charisma, but it's hidden. So we have to train that. We have to polish that. We have to bring that out of him with our staff and our ancillary support to be able to make him more into a star. And it's doing very, very well now. And he's learned how to do that while still being a top player.
So I'm hearing very differing opinions here. One is slightly more performance driven. The other one is a little bit on charisma. Yasin, you are currently the last voice here on this panel to decide what is more important.
No, I think there is no more, like, something more important than other. It's a mix of both, but definitely you cannot get everything into a player or a team. But No, I would definitely just agree with both of them. Like take some stuff from the performance and some stuff from the charisma, but also the thing is, yeah, charisma doesn't have to do like nothing to do with the how you look. It's just like how you express yourself and how are you, let's say, able to sell your sponsorships and teams and your team, yeah, into like a show or an interview or something, but nothing to do with how you look, definitely.
I think on that note, it's very interesting because I spoke to a couple of influencer agencies who are really just exploring esports, right? And a lot of them subscribe to the Korean model of talent management, where there is a lot of that focus on looks and everything. So given the infancy of esports and teams specifically within esports, there is definitely the potential of it to go one way or the other. Having your opinion is of course very important because we are fellow team owners and we kind of chart the path to the right one. I think it's important to really get a message out there that charisma doesn't equate to looks, and speaking about that, on the front of training someone to be more charismatic, there's always a level of support that organizations or teams like ours could do. So speaking on that note, though, I'd like to find out a little bit more about the ancillary support, apart from just performance, that goes into the management and development of a player. And maybe for that topic, and any takers, anyone want to take that question first? No?
Sean, you can go ahead. Sean, I think Sean has
Sean?
something
Okay,
to
Sean, let's go.
Yeah, performance side, obviously that's one side. From the social media side, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we want to train players on, right? Because there's one thing I think a lot of aspiring talent should also understand, and it's the same in professional sport as well. Your careers are only going to be X period of time, right? Because in certain titles, like you look at League of Legends, you look at first-person shooters such as it's just maybe you can start at like 15, 16 and you play to like 10, 15 years maybe, and then after that you kind of have to taper off. So definitely like teaching things on the media and marketing training side is really important, and we definitely do that. We have a partnership with Twitch, so like streaming is a big part of everything that we do here at Talent, right? So everyone has to do a minimum of 10 hours, and we kind of help them basically learn how to start streaming and then start refining exactly sort of parts of the stream, how we give some feedback and you should be doing this or that, or how you manage that. On the social media and marketing side, I think it's really important for to really focus on creating content, right, for themselves and sharing it to their fans. And so often some of our teams, such as League of Legends, where they have really intense training schedules, then they may not have as much time. We'll have our creative team sort of help them sort of manage it on their behalf and basically facilitate that. So I think it's important that all the teams do it, and I think everyone here does the same thing. We really try and support as best we can. Media training is also important, so like how you do the interviews. We like to smack talk a little bit here at Talent, so we teach a little bit of that to our players if they're comfortable with doing those things. But it's only within their personality and realms and what they want to do, right? Sometimes some of them are just not, they don't want to do it, and we can't force it. But I think as a bit of advice, I think all players should try it. And I think when you join an organization, you should also be asking the questions: what are the additional things that are there to support you? So similar to Panda, similar to PSG, having these social networks, social media teams that help support, promote the players, I think is important. And that training there that comes with it is also important because it's a skill set in itself, how to manage a community, how to manage your fans. It's not as easy as just streaming and hope it works out. You actually need to create a niche or a particular angle or a voice that people connect with and be able to sort of resonate with, right? Which I think is not as easy as just doing it. There's actually a skill to that as well.
And would this differ for Panda Global, Dr. Allen?
No, not at all. In fact, training people on things like social media, streaming, YouTube content as well is extraordinarily important to us because this is also, in my opinion, a career path for them. Being a player is a temporary career. Depending on the game. I mean, what is it, Daigo, who's 40 or something? He's one of the older players that they just won an online tournament a couple weeks ago in Street Fighter. 39, thank you, someone in the chat. He's defying all the odds. So, but still, it is not necessarily a career path that everyone can be on forever. and what does your career look like afterwards as a player? And that often goes to streaming, you know, to YouTube, to social media, to if you have a brand outside of just being a player. And that's really where Panda Global has been focusing since our beginnings. We want to make sure a player has a career. We want to make sure a player has a retirement plan. You know, we want to make sure that they're taken care of in the long term, not just the short term. Not always a popular idea either for a 20-something-year-old, you know, who's just rising, or a teenager, you know, who's just rising, that we want to help support their lives from 5 years from now, not just today. But, you know, those that understand it are really appreciative of it. And we're very serious about that as well. Providing support to players and training, those things are extraordinarily important to us.
Right. To share a little bit more about that as well, I think it's some of the Korean esports teams. They actually have a go back to school program for some of the athletes who, once they decide to retire, maybe they can go back to study. Maybe this is something that, you know, a lot of different teams can look towards creating in the future to support. Like what Dr. Allen said, the kind of career and the kind of push that we could really give to these talented individuals is very important. So with that said, I understand there's actually quite a lot of questions coming in. I'm receiving quite a lot of PMs as well for some of our more shy friends who are watching this via Discord. So let me ask some questions that are directly from the Zoom call first, from Mr. Daryl Sin. He's wondering, besides giving players a salary, what do your organizations do to evaluate to assign player perhaps training or lifestyle? So I understand Sean mentioned, you know, you've got nutritionists, you've got chefs that keep them fat, which is great. We don't even have a chef here in Singapore for resurgence, and that's a really sad thing. Yeah, so maybe you guys can share, right? So what kind of extra value do you add?
Yeah, I mean, I can start with this. So I would say, as a player, I think joining an organization is really important to ask the right questions in regards to additional things that are supportive, right? Because it's the career that you're choosing to take, and I think you know, just getting a salary and sticking a brand on it is one thing, but can you get more out of it? And so, as our organization, you know, definitely on the performance side, we provide very heavy coaching from, you know, a team of coaches and analysts and player managers that will work with the players to, I guess, let them know, like, to get to the highest level, this is the type of work that needs to be done, right? And so from that perspective, you definitely have that. Social media marketing and content is a big part of the additional support that we provide. You know, eventually we want to get to a point where we can pick up players and provide them a platform and help them become the next big names, right? And I think, you know, Talon, we're still sort of a small to medium-sized esports teams are looking to grow, but, like, you know, if you join an organization like a T1, a G2, or a TSM, or, you know, they have a fantastic platform that is able to do that, and we want to be able to do that as well, and it's something that we're working toward. And yeah, I think also post-career is also important, right? It's something that actually we do provide here at Talon. We work with a local partner here in Hong Kong that provides scholarships to the US for collegiate esports, if that's something that's of interest for the players, if they can pass certain sort of academic parameters. So yeah, I would say for any aspiring players, ask those questions. It should be something that you should be asking for, because it's not just about a salary. It should be the additional support that you get to become better players and also become better people as well. And I think that that's something that's really important for us here at Talon.
Great. And Dr. Allen or Yasin, you guys have anything more to add to that point?
Yeah, so basically, after everything Sean said, you know, what we do also at PSG is that every team or partners have at least the opportunity to come one time per year in Paris to our facilities, to use the football facilities, having access to mental coaching, like nutritionist, anything related to sports, because basically we're trying to, you know, cross the bridge between sports and esports. And I think it's part of our strategy to also partner with local partners such as Talon Esports, is to really, you know, use, let's say, our experience from the sports industry and use in a way also their experience in the esports to make sure we have, you know, a best fit out of it, and having like all those opportunities around that make the teams and the players even better players. So yeah, that's what we add on top of that.
Dr. Allen?
I will just echo the sentiments. I feel the same. And I think that every player should go in asking sort of what the ancillary things are. A lot of players will go into negotiations and they'll only be worried about the dollar signs at the end. And there is so much more that a team does than just pay them. There's so much support that we give, and oftentimes a player will join the team not knowing what to expect, and then a year later say, I can't believe that you guys have done so much for me. It's hard to keep pushing this because a lot of people push this rhetoric, but the whole family thing, we do treat our players like a family, like they're one of us, and we give them the same resources a family would give them. I've had players call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, because they're having some difficulty in their lives. That's not something, we necessarily advertise. And that's not something that you ask for, right? To have that mentorship, to have that closeness, and that ability to support you when times are rough. But at the end of the day, that matters a lot to people. And it's a service that we don't provide lightly, so there's a lot that goes into an esports organization, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. So join Panda Global for a chat with Dr. Allen at 3 a.m. I mean, it's definitely good to know. It's definitely good to know that, as fellow team owners, we build a strong relationship with our players. Speaking about that, there's also a question from Donald, who is saying that age is a factor. How old are your oldest players? And is the lifespan, in your opinion, of an esports player even shorter than that of a sportsman? Any takers for this question?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that first. So from our perspective, I think it varies a lot, right? It depends on the game, and Alan will agree with me. For fighting games, you can play a lot longer, because I would say, the pure reaction mechanical skill is not the only thing. If you look at a lot of the fighting games, psychology is a big part of it. Baiting, the way you think, the way you condition your opponent, those things come from experience. It's not purely just mechanical. And I think Hot Dog, who's probably one of our older players, is in his 30s, right? And I could see him playing until close to 40 as well. You see guys like Sako, Daigo, a lot of these older guys in Street Fighter V, and they still have a lot of success. And that's purely because it's not purely based on speed and reaction. In certain games, like I would say like League and first-person shooters, where it becomes a bit more mechanically focused and it degrades over time, and maybe the experience is useful, but then after a while just tapers off simply because of the mechanical side, then you may have players who can go to 25, 26, 27, 28 in those cases, but then you just have a lot of younger talent coming through. I would say the careers are probably roughly the same. It's like 10, 15 years is pretty normal. But in saying that, also just to follow on with that, I mean, if you do well at a club as a player and you show the right, attributes, and here at Talon, we're always looking for good coaches, good player managers, good analysts, good streamers, good content creators. And Alan will say the same. It's just like, it's not just about that, right? There's a lot of opportunities afterwards. You just got to make sure that you're thinking about those as well. But I would say the time frame is relatively the same. Most professional football players, at least I know, it's like maybe 10, 15 years is kind of the max amount of time that you can be playing at the highest level before, it starts tapering off. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll wholeheartedly agree. And I'll actually say that in terms of at least fighting games, it's beneficial to the players that the fighting games are becoming less, I guess, technically demanding in terms of execution, in terms of just speed and being able to do certain things. And it's becoming more about thinking, about the mind games, about like setting traps for opponents and whatnot. So that's allowing, I think, players also to play for much, much longer. Now, that said, though, you look at games like League of Legends or shooters where the APM is higher. It's extraordinarily high. The quick reflex reactions are very, very high. The amount of training a player has to do is very, very high. So repetitive motion injuries are pretty common in those in comparison. So from a medical standpoint, things like carpal tunnels, tennis elbows. I know they're not playing tennis, but that's just the colloquial term for it. These things can actually become chronic injuries and prevent you from being able to play at the top of your level in games like that. So, there's a variety of reasons why other titles, in my opinion, have a shorter lifespan. Yeah, I think I agree with sort of that 10-15 number. Although I would shorten it for a couple games, maybe like 8 or 9 for a few games out there. So really depends.
Right. Okay, so going to the next question. This is a very interesting one from Gerald. So bearing in mind that our panelists are not operating within Singapore, the question is, how can we grow the Singaporean scene to produce more homegrown talents? So he's probably asking us to put our heads together and in your opinion, of course, what do you think a country like Singapore that's got like maybe 6 million population, really small, how can we group together to produce more homegrown talents? Any takers for this question?
I guess it's really about like organizing, let's say, local tournaments, trying to do some scouting grounds, but there is no real, let's say, recipe to find talents or to produce them. So it's a very hard question, actually. It's pretty simple, but it's very hard in a way. But yeah, I would say, yeah, organize more things, and thanks to the Singaporean Games Association, I think that there is a lot of stuff coming on about that. Unfortunately, with the situation with the COVID, it's very hard to organize anything like physical, but there is a lot of stuff happening online. And yeah, I just think that we need, like you guys in Singapore, need somebody to take the lead on that subject and organize more. Yeah.
Any other thoughts from?
Yeah, I mean, I'll add a little bit more. I think definitely agree with Yassine. Having more local tournaments is really important, and more activations and more opportunities to play. I would also say, like in certain instances, and depending on the game that you're going for, in the traditional sport, they had that saying, right? Iron sharpens iron. If you want to become the best footballer, then often the best places to play would be in Europe, right? If you want to become the best. And so, if there are opportunities, I would say for players to travel to certain areas where you can spend time doing boot camps with top teams within the region or globally, I would say try and do more of that stuff as well. It doesn't hurt, right? Like if you can get time with, let's say you're a League of Legends player and you can spend some time in Korea or your team, and you can go train with CK and LCK teams and get smashed for like a couple of months and then realize like, okay, these are the things that we need to work on, I think is good as well. I think definitely on the grassroots level, doing more local tournaments, and then once you start pushing to that upper echelon, is to just continuously push yourself, right? Go to the best places, play the best people, and get beat, and then learn from that, and then try and lift that up to the next level. I think that's really important, the environment that you're in, because if you are in an environment where everyone is super competitive and you're at the highest tier, that definitely helps push those players further. So if there are opportunities to travel, obviously, in the current times, it's all a bit difficult. But if you do get a chance, I would say try that because, I think, as they say, iron sharpens iron, right? And I think that's a really important concept. And it's valid within esports as well. Yeah.
I just want to add one thing to this, is just mentorship. It's not just having the tournaments and stuff like that. It's also when you have someone good in your region, they have to be, or it's best if they are willing to help someone who's not as good, to train them, to give them opportunities to get better, because you never know when one of those new people who join could be the next superstar. So mentorship is huge, and if you find yourself passionate about your local scene and producing more local talent, producing that sort of big brother, big sister program where you can train people who are just getting started or have interest in it, it can go such a long way.
Yeah. I want to add, like, specifically, like, for Street Fighter 5, you look at what Shan's done for the community there and the young players that are coming out of Singapore. And that's a perfect example. And the same, what we're trying with what Human Bob did for Hong Kong, right? Guys like Hot Dog and Dennis and Z, that's all by big brother, small brother opportunities, right? And then, yeah, I would completely echo that. That's really important.
Right. So I was about to bring up CN actually because CN is one of the few, very, very few success stories of Singapore. He's a world champion, I think in 2013 in Evo. And how he got there was really just a community, getting together, some of them even funding him, sending him across the entire Pacific Ocean to the United States to get smashed for the first few years, rallying behind. And right now what he's doing is he has this versus Asia weekly kind of a tournament to try and train up maybe up and coming players. So this is something that I think a lot of other games like League of Legends, Mobile Legends doesn't have, the kind of stickiness in the community. And maybe if players within a small country like Singapore can stop comparing themselves to each other, but start realizing that the world is a much bigger place, then we can really improve. So great, thanks for your insights. We're going to take 3 more questions before we end this. And the next question I have is from the Discord chat. Which games should esports players in Southeast Asia focus on that has longevity and a long-term career? Any questions, or rather any takers for this question?
We've been doing a lot of study into Southeast Asia around sort of expansion plans into games, and one of the biggest things that we've seen is the mobile esports trend. I think that probably agree, Jeff. Like it's one of the biggest trends within Southeast Asia, right? Because everyone has a mobile phone, the 3G, 4G, 5G connections are all amazing. So titles that we're looking at in Southeast Asia, like Arena of Valor, I think is a huge title within at least the Thailand, Vietnam region, which I think is quite strong. I think new mobile legends, the Wild Rift, the mobile version of League of Legends, I think has a lot of potential as well. And then I think MLBB, right, the other one out of with a huge emphasis in sort of Indonesia and Philippines and parts of Singapore as well, is also interesting titles as well. I mean, within the region, within Southeast Asia, if you're looking globally, then the top 5 esports I think are pretty set, and there is some movement, but generally it's pretty consistent. But I think within our region, mobile games is good. And also, in Thailand for Arena of Battle, a lot of our players are a lot older. They're in their some in their late early 30s as well. And it's not always about that super hardcore mechanical stuff in some of these games, as much as maybe not as much as PC, depending on the title, but there's definitely opportunities there. And I think mobile esports is going to be a big part of the growth in Southeast Asia, which I think is a good place to be for aspiring talents.
Great. So I'm just going to go on to the last 2 questions. So in the interest of time, we want to try and get as much of these quality questions out in the way as possible. The next question, it's a very interesting one. What are the ways to determine non-publisher operated esports tournaments are legit? Should I join them?
I can tackle this one since fighting games, it's extraordinarily common to have non-publisher events. No.
Don't join?
No way. No way. No way of telling. No, you absolutely have to join.
Okay.
But it comes down to knowing the community leaders in that area and following them on Twitter or other things and seeing if they're going, then there you go. If no community figureheads are going to that event that is not run by the publisher, don't go, not worth it. And that's pretty much what it comes down to, knowing who's going and seeing if it's worth it to you by that. But there are a lot of events just pop up all of a sudden. No one knows who's running them. No one knows anything they're about, and they're run terribly. So it's we've all been burned in our scene because of that.
And maybe apart from the fighting games, Sean or Yasin, do you guys have any points to add on joining esports tournament that are not done by publishers?
I mean, it really depends, like what kind of tournament we're talking about, and like what's your rank and what you're trying to achieve. But if you're an aspirant and you're trying just to play and to face other players, I mean, there is nothing against joining them, I guess. So I don't see any issue with that.
Sure. On that note, as part of our initiative in the Singapore Games Association, what we're doing under Singapore Esports umbrella is really to give and provide some form of an accreditation when it comes to new tournament organizers. We understand that there's a lot of anxiety when it comes to local events and community events, and some of them being run and they're very poorly handled, like what Dr. Allen has mentioned, and whether or even the situation where they don't pay the prize money that was promised, a lack of standardization. And I think this is something that the Singapore Games Association is going to try and address for the local scene. But regionally and globally, like what Dr. Allen said, if check out if some of the other teams are playing, see which teams are prominent. If you see PSG there, likely the organization that is holding the tournament is legit. If not, Sean will chase after them for money for sure. Okay, great. So last question before we end our time here. This one is from Jensen. How do teams determine and calculate the value of a player? And how do teams plan to develop and continue to measure the value of that player over time during their involvement with the organization? Any takers for this question?
I will bring like let's say a way to value a player, but then I think that Sean and Alan can bring other ways also to determine that. But basically, from like on some games, I would say that the calculation of a player is about like how many months remaining in the contract and what's the salary per month, and then you can have like evaluation of the contract and of the player. But then there is like so many other ways to determine that. But I think that that's the first one, and that's the most common one from any other sports or any other things in the world, I would say.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Okay.
And I mean, in terms of what you evaluate players on, I think I have an old spreadsheet that has 16 different categories that I would look at players. But sometimes even just one of those categories is enough to sign them. And that just depends on the game and what your needs are.
Okay, great. So I guess that's the last question, and unfortunately we ran out of time. So once again, thank you so much to Dr. Allen from Panda Global, as well as Yassine from PSG Esports, and Sean, who is the CEO at Talent Esports. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time this lovely afternoon. And if you guys have more questions, do reach out to the fellow panelists via Twitter, or you can message their Facebook page of the teams. Personally, I see a lot of those questions come through that channel myself, so it would be a great way to reach us. So once again, thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
To you, thanks. Bye.